You know that feeling when you download a new productivity app, commit to waking up at 5 a.m., or reorganize your entire schedule, and you think, this time it's different? It never is. And here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. The problem isn't your willpower or your discipline. The problem is, your brain is literally designed to reject the very changes you're trying to make. This is what we're talking about today, and honestly, understanding this one thing will change how you approach productivity forever. If you've ever felt excited about a new system for exactly 3 days before completely abandoning it, you're not alone. Studies show that 92% of New Year's resolutions fail by January 15th. Not by February, by the 15th of January, 92%. But here's what fascinates me. These aren't lazy people. These aren't unmotivated people. These are the same people who've read the books, watched the videos, and desperately want to change. Yet every single time, their brain sabotages them. And there's a reason for that. Most people think productivity tips fail because they're too ambitious or because we lack consistency. But that's backwards. The real reason is rooted in 3 specific brain mechanisms that are actively working against you the moment you try to change anything. Let me explain the first mechanism, and this is where neuroscience gets really interesting. Your brain has something called the basal ganglia. Think of it as your brain's autopilot system. Once you develop a habit, your brain stores that pattern in the basal ganglia. And here's the key part. It stops using your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is the conscious, decision-making part of your brain. It's the part that can willpower through a new schedule. But habits, those bypass willpower entirely. They run on autopilot. Now, here's where most productivity advice completely misses the mark. When you try to implement a new tip, you're asking your prefrontal cortex to override the basal ganglia. But your prefrontal cortex gets exhausted. It's like a muscle, and after making conscious decisions all day, it's depleted. So by the time you need it most, usually around 3 p.m., that's when your willpower fails. That's not weakness, that's neuroscience. But there's more to this. The second mechanism is something called cue sensitivity. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for cues that trigger your old habits. You sit at your desk, and your brain immediately triggers the neural pathway to open social media first. Not because you decided to, but because your brain saw the cue, the desk, and it fired the pattern before your conscious mind could even react. This happens in literally half a second, faster than thought. And this is where it gets really interesting. Most people try to use willpower to resist these cues, but willpower, remember, is a depleted resource. So, what do they do instead? They gradually make exceptions. Just this once. Just today. And that's actually not laziness. That's your brain responding exactly as it's designed to respond. The third mechanism is called the default mode network, or DMN. When you're not actively focused on something, your brain defaults to a specific pattern of thinking. It reinforces your old identity. If you've spent the last 5 years thinking of yourself as someone who can't focus, someone who's disorganized, or someone who procrastinates, your brain will actually resist changes that contradict that identity. This sounds weird, but it's real neuroscience. Your brain prefers consistency, even if that consistency is negative. So here's the psychological piece that most people completely ignore. We approach productivity like we're fixing a broken machine. We think there's something wrong with us, and if we just install the right tool or follow the right system, we'll be fixed. But that's the fundamental mistake. Productivity isn't a problem to be solved. It's a pattern to be restructured. And that requires understanding something deeper about how humans operate. The real reason your productivity tips never last is that you're trying to change behavior while keeping the identity exactly the same. You're still the person who procrastinates. you're still the person who gets distracted. Now you're just the person who procrastinates while using a new app. The identity hasn't shifted, so your brain pulls you back to match that identity. This is what psychologists call identity behavior alignment. You literally can't sustain a behavior that contradicts how you see yourself. Your brain won't let you. Here's what actually works, and I want to be specific about this. You need 3 things, and only 3 things. First, restructure your environment before restructuring your habits. Don't rely on willpower. Eliminate the cues that trigger old patterns. If social media kills your focus, don't try to resist it. Make it physically impossible to access during work blocks. Delete the app. Use website blockers. Seriously. Change the environment so your basal ganglia never gets triggered in the first place. This isn't about discipline. This is about making the old pattern impossible. Second, start with an identity shift, not a habit shift. Don't say, I'm going to be more productive. Say, I'm someone who protects my focus. Or, I'm someone who finishes what I start. Then ask yourself, what would that person do in this situation? This sounds simple, but it's neurologically powerful. Your brain will start filtering information and behaviors that align with this new identity. Within about 2 weeks, you'll be making different choices automatically because they match how you now see yourself. Third, use the 72-hour rule. Any new system needs to survive 72 hours before your brain integrates it into your basal ganglia. This means the first 3 days are critical. That's when your prefrontal cortex is still engaged. Don't wait until day 4 to assess whether it's working. By then, your brain has already started rejecting it. Protect those first 72 hours like they're sacred. No exceptions. Here's what I need you to understand. Productivity isn't about finding the perfect system. It's about understanding how your brain actually works and then building systems around that reality instead of against it. The tips never last because they're fighting your neurology. But once you work with your brain instead of against it, everything changes. So here's my question for you. What's one environmental change you could make today that would eliminate the biggest cue triggering your worst productivity habit? Don't think about the habit itself. Just change the trigger. If you answer that in the comments, I'll respond to the most interesting ones. And if you haven't already, subscribe because we dive deep into this stuff every week. Next video, we're talking about why your brain literally resists routine, and it's not what you think. See you there.